get podcasts. So I have instructions for iPhone people, for Android people, and for people that just want to access it on their computers. So it's step-by-step instructions. I'll make sure that you have my contact information. I know many of you do, but I'll make sure you have my contact information in case you get stuck and need any help. But ultimately, we're all going to, this is not mandatory, of course, but we're all going to listen to a podcast. And then in the near future, we're going to come together and do a Zoom conversation about it. Not only talking about just our impressions on a podcast and the format and the hosts and that kind of thing, but the content itself, which is a topic that we probably can all relate to, which is the robocall. So we'll get to learn a little bit more about that while getting some practice downloading and accessing podcasts. Okay? Does that sound like a good plan for today?
Very
I got a bunch of thumbs up.
Yes.
All right. Okay. All right. So let me just, Judy, if you want to pop up the first slide, which will just go over what we're going to cover today. All right. So the first part of this lecture, we're just going to talk about what's a podcast, and then why should we even be listening to these things? And then we'll talk about where to find them. There's a bunch of apps out there. Apps are applications or little programs that we can use to access podcasts. And then we're going to do some exploration on our own. And you can do that here on the call, or you can do that on your own, after the call today, to actually visit a website to find podcasts. And then, like I said, we're going to share a bunch of popular podcasts on all different topics, from politics and news to true crime and everything in between. So we can move on to the next slide there. All right. So just a show of hands, how many people listen to podcasts on a regular basis? Actually, now I can't see everybody. Hold on a
Okay,
second.
I can. So there looks like there's about raised hands, maybe about 4 or 5.
4 or 5. Okay. So for those of you who have listened to a podcast before, if you don't mind, do you want to share the name of it or the topic?
Huh, wonder why it won't.
There we go.
And if those of you who are on without your video, we would love to see you as part of the group. So if you want to go to the bottom left and click on the video camera that has the red line through it, so it can put your video on, we would love to see you all.
I don't see it.
You've got to put the cursor on your screen to make it pop up. It won't just be there. So activate your cursor on your Zoom screen, and the bottom, along the very bottom, it should pop up. And
Nope.
still don't see it, huh, Mary? Mary,
Nope.
we don't see you either. You've got the Zoom blank out screen on
Right,
somehow
right.
on your settings. So yeah, I don't know if that may be causing it. All right. Well, anyway, hi, Tony.
Hey, Judy, how are you?
Good.
Hi, Tony.
And say, hey, Mary.
Hi.
So we'll
Hello.
proceed then. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. So for those who do listen to podcasts, what kinds of podcasts have you listened to?
Gina, this is Mary.
Hey, Mary Lou. Yeah.
I listen to a ton of I'm subscribed to a ton of podcasts, but I don't get to listen to them. One of my favorites is something called Family Secrets,
Okay.
which, run by the author of Inheritance, Dani Shapiro. She's great. I have a couple of guilty secrets of my own that I listen to relating to The Bachelor. I somehow Washington Week. There's a couple of book ones. There, just all kinds. Cold Case. Katie Couric has one that's fabulous.
Oh, cool.
Called Next Question. The Librarian is in, which is put out by the two New York Public Library workshops, that kind of thing. So basically, that's my. And then there's a ton more, but that's kind of an overview.
Yeah.
Of what I enjoy listening to.
Okay, great. Anybody else?
This is Carol.
Carol.
I listen to Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me.
Uh-huh.
It's just really fun and funny.
Yeah. NPR has a bunch of podcasts that you can listen to on an app. You can also listen to it right through the NPR website. Yeah, Debbie.
I was just going to follow up on Carol and you, Christina, and that when I do listen, a lot of it is off of NPR. If you go to npr.org or you have the app on a device like a tablet or your phone, and then NPR has a whole sort of category you can click on of podcasts, and everything you could listen to, all the shows you could listen to on NPR, you could also listen to on the podcast, and sometimes they have extra additional material. And do you remember Car Talk? Did people used to listen?
Yeah, I love that.
CHER that I have listened to a little bit. Trevor Noah is on there from The Daily Show, so you have to sort of like that kind of thing. But he does a lot of extra things from The Daily Show. A lot of it's funny, but I haven't fully explored Stitcher.com or Stitcher the app, but it looks like it has a lot of other interesting things, and I really like listening to Trevor Noah on there.
All right, great. Anybody else wanted to share? No? Yeah, hi.
Hi.
I can't see your name. Oh, Tracy. Hi.
Yeah. I started listening in the past year, and there's so many. I almost was glad to be home from work, thinking I'd have time to catch up on some of these. It's not quite the case, but anyhow, two that I really liked is one is called the Happiness Lab, and they've got some great stuff out of a professor at Yale. It was the most popular class at Yale, and they made it into a podcast. So it's the Happiness Lab. Another one was Stuff You Missed in History Class. And I found it they've got some really good, interesting stories about things in history that I wasn't taught in school. They're completely different angles or much more detail, or quite interesting. So there's just two that I really enjoyed. There's a lot, though, that are out there. Oh, yeah. NPR, you mentioned that. Their Life Kit is really good. And then if you're interested in businesses and how they were built, NPR puts out How I Built This, and they interview people who created different businesses and challenges they had.
That's a great one. All right, so we got a few people listening to podcasts. As you can maybe tell already, they come in every different topic you could imagine. So anything you're interested in, hobbies, history, politics, business, you're going to be able to find a podcast on that topic. And chances are you'll find more than one, because as of January, there were over 900,000 podcasts out there, and there are more coming out every day. Okay, so what is a podcast? A podcast, if you think about it, it's kind of like talk radio. So, if you're in your car listening to the AM stations and it's just a talk show about whatever topic, it's the same kind of thing, except this is really primarily accessed via your smartphone, and it's a radio show on the internet. So the way podcasts work are very much kind of like they're episodic, which means that there wouldn't be a podcast with just one episode. Instead, there'd be multiple episodes, and they could come out, once a day or once a week or once a month. They can be all different frequencies. They can also be all different lengths. There are some podcasts that might be about 20 minutes or so, and there are some that might be 2.5 hours. So we already talked about they can be on lots of different topics, and they can also be lots of different formats. So sometimes you might have a podcast with just one person talking, telling a story. You might have 2 or 3 hosts. And sometimes you have a host with a guest. So there's all different formats too. But if you think about it just like a radio show on the internet, it's pretty much what it is. So they've been around since about 2004. So they've been around for a while now, but I would say within the last, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years, they've become a lot more popular. Does anybody know kind of the podcast that made podcasts what they are today? I can't see anybody, so I'm not sure if anyone's responding, but there we go.
Is it Serial?
Yeah, Serial. There was this podcast called Serial, and it was called Serial because that's what it was, where every week they would tell a story and it would kind of just follow in order. And that one was actually kind of a true crime. They have other ones now, but that was really the podcast that just got everyone talking and thinking about podcasts. Does anyone know how they got the word podcast? Yeah. Okay. I didn't know this until I got my cheat sheet here. But podcast is a combination of the word iPod and broadcast. So iPod, is everyone familiar with iPod? They don't really exist anymore.
I think we're all muted.
Are you all muted?
The protocol is that you all stay muted until you're speaking. So if somebody wants to speak, you take yourself off of mute, but this way the speaker isn't competing with background noise. So if anybody wants to say something about that, you can unmute yourself. You can also raise your hand to be called on when we're not on screen share. And yes is this, and no is that.
There's all this Zoom lingo I have to learn. Well, I guess it's not even lingo, it's just hand symbols. Okay, so yeah, iPod and broadcast, because initially the iPod was kind of like a music media player before we all had smartphones that do all that stuff for us. But they're really, really popular. There's, I would say, I mean, for me personally, most of the time, if I'm walking around or driving or cleaning, I'm listening to a podcast in the background. All right, so I think the next slide is why listen to podcasts, possibly. Slide number 4. All right. So for those of you who do listen to podcasts, when do you usually put them on?
At night as I'm falling asleep.
Okay.
Driving.
Driving. Anybody else?
Cooking.
Yeah, so the podcasts are really good, just kind of like playing music. They're good to have on the background as you're doing something else. I drive a lot during the week, and so I get to listen to lots and lots of podcasts, and they just kind of help me obviously entertainment, but learn something new and just make my drive a lot more manageable. But for the most part, people are listening while they're doing something else. So there are entertainment podcasts. So there's storytelling podcasts, comedy podcasts. There's ones that, teach you something. Let's say you're starting a business. There's tons and tons of podcasts out there for starting, marketing plans and social media and just stories of entrepreneurs and how they've grown their business. So there's tons of things like that where you can actually learn or get inspiration, personal, professional growth, and then just culture, stories of people around the world, these stories you may never have heard before. So for me, podcasts are a really, really great way to not only learn, but keep myself entertained, and feel like when I'm doing something like cleaning, I'm actually doing something a little bit beneficial for my brain. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. All right. Okay. And we'll have this up here. I'm going to give you a couple of other handouts at the end of our session today that'll help you access some of these podcasts. But the biggest question that I get from people is, okay, these podcasts sound great, but I have absolutely no idea where to get these things from. There's a number of different ways. One way is just to go on the internet, get on your computer. You can go to different websites, media companies that produce podcasts, such as NPR, BBC, PRX. These organizations have podcasts. And so you can go right to their website, click on podcasts, and then listen to any episode that you want. The good news about podcasts is that most of them are free. So you never have to pay for it. And all the podcast apps have free services as well. So you shouldn't have to pay any money to listen to a podcast. Can we switch it back so I can see everybody? I can see Connie. Hey, Connie. That's just about it. Okay. So does everyone, who's familiar with the difference between streaming content online and downloading it? Okay. So, okay. I see like 2 thumbs that are this way, so I don't know what that means. Okay.
Okay, that's a
hi
good
down there.
new hand signal. All right, now we know. Mary Devon, this is like, yeah, maybe.
Okay, Tom's got that too. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Eve says no. Okay. So streaming, when we say stream, so we talk about streaming music or podcasts or TV, right? We can stream Netflix and watch movies and TV shows. So streaming basically means that we are just watching something. We're pressing play and watching something over the internet, and it happens right away. Okay. The problem is we can't stream something if we're not connected to the internet. So we need to be connected to the internet. We need to be connected to Wi-Fi to stream something. So when it comes to podcasts, you can stream them, which means you just listen to it live over the internet with, as long as you have an internet connection. Downloading, on the other hand, means that you're taking something from the internet and you're bringing it down onto your device. Okay? So that means that if I download a podcast, I have it on my phone and I can listen to it anytime, no matter if I'm connected to the internet or what. Does anyone have an idea of why it might be a good idea to actually download music or podcasts or movies sometimes rather than stream it?
Well, you're not always connected to the internet, and also
Yeah.
you're using your data if you're walking around doing it that way.
True. Yeah. So sometimes if you're not connected to the internet, you won't be able to stream something. If you're streaming content online, you could be using your data, which means that bit of internet space that you pay for every month on your phone bill, let's say. If you go over that data, sometimes you get these really big, annoying charges. So yeah, we want to conserve our data as much as possible.
I've also found that when I'm streaming, sometimes it freezes up, and I get these sort of interruptions, and I think I never know either it's my device, my Wi-Fi, the network, or what. But if you download it, I think that's less likely to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point too. Yeah. Yeah, Debbie. I think you're on mute there.
I had kind of a question that comes up. So a lot of times on airplanes, people aren't connected to Wi-Fi, but they are listening to things and watching things. So in that case, did they probably download them before they got on the plane so they could do that?
Yeah, so that's a lot of times if I know I'm going to be on an airplane for a while, I will download a few podcast episodes so I don't have to connect to an internet. I don't have to be connected to the internet. I can just listen to it because it's on my device.
Do podcasts take up a lot of data, like more than music?
I don't really have an answer for you there. I'd have to look into that. I don't think so. I have so many podcasts on my phone. It's almost embarrassing. And I forgot who was saying this. I have so many and I don't have time to listen to them all. And I haven't had any issues with using too much data.
This is Monette, and no, they
Hey,
don't
Monette.
take up more data because they are just like audio, so it's just like music. It's going to be
Okay.
about the same amount.
Uh-huh.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thanks, Monette. All right. So when you go on any of these websites, and they were on that slide, we're going to, and if you want these slides or those websites, I'm happy to share that with you. But a good example is to go to the npr.org website. Right at the top, and actually I might be able to show this. Can you click on that link there on the, will it let you do that? Okay. All right. So if you go right to the NPR website, you see at the top in the main navigation menu in that gray bar, it says shows and podcasts. So this is going to show you a listing of all the NPR shows and podcasts that are available. So let's say we were interested in business and economics. Let's click on the Planet Money web podcast, which is the very first one in the green box. There it is. Okay. So this is another podcast that I really like to listen to. They're really short and very interesting little business, economics sort of topics. So if I scroll down just a little bit, I can see in the center column, it says most recent episodes. And so I can just click on that listen button and I can listen to the most recent episode right from my computer. Okay. You can also download it too if you wanted to. So it would save it to your computer and you could listen to it anytime. And then if you scroll down the list, you can listen to previous episodes as well. So if you want to dabble in podcasts and you're not quite sure yet about downloading apps and all that kind of stuff, just go right to the NPR website and you can listen to a ton of podcasts that they have right there for free. And it's a good way to sort of get started and get comfortable with it. Does anybody recognize any of these names here or listen to any of these shows? Okay.
I think I've listened to, some of them look familiar, but then I get bored with them and then I'll get rid of them. So,
Uh-huh.
it's something that they do look kind of, especially the TED Radio Hour. Familiar.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. All right. So we talked about one way you can access podcasts, which is right on a media company's website. You can also have an application or an app that will allow you to access podcasts, listen to them, subscribe. Does anybody know what it means to subscribe to a podcast?
I do.
No?
Sorry
Yeah, Mary Lou.
I'm sorry to keep jumping in like this. But
You're an expert.
No, but,
It
means when the newest edition of that particular podcast comes out, then it just automatically goes into your downloads into your device. So
exactly, yeah.
Like go on a website and find it. It will just come to you automatically.
Yep, yeah. So when we subscribe to a podcast, it means that every time a new episode is released, it automatically gets added to your library. So you don't have to search for it. So if there's a podcast that you really like, by subscribing to it, you'll just ensure that you're not going to miss any episodes. Okay? You don't have to subscribe to a podcast to listen to it. You can listen to just an episode here and there. Okay. How many people have an Android? Okay. All right. Does anybody not have a smartphone? Okay, I think we got everybody there. Okay, good. So at the end of our session today, I'm going to share this document with you. And it's instructions for accessing podcasts from an iPhone and from an Android. So for those of you who have iPhones, your phone comes with a built-in app, the podcast app, and it's a purple icon. And so it makes it really easy for you to access podcasts. If you have an Android, you have, and Monia, I'm not sure, do you have an Android? Is Monia there? Okay.
I am here. I have an
Okay.
Android and I have an iPhone, but the Android
Okay.
is not connected to phone service, but I can listen to podcasts and everything
Okay.
online.
Yeah, so I couldn't quite find if the Google Podcast app comes with the phone pre-installed or if you have to install that. Do you
That's
know?
a good question. I
Okay.
haven't used it for podcasting, but I have done video
Okay.
chat with the Android phone. So I think it's
Okay.
native with
Okay.
Google.
Okay. So I think that for both devices, it comes with this pre-installed podcast app. So you don't have to download anything in order to start listening to podcasts. There are other apps out there that you can download, and many people choose to do that for a variety of reasons. Stitcher is a popular one. And I know, Debbie, you were talking about that before. You can also Spotify, the streaming music service, that also allows you to listen to podcasts. If you have an Apple computer or a tablet, you might have seen the iTunes app. You can listen to podcasts through the iTunes app as well. And there's a whole bunch of apps out there. But if you have an iPhone or an iPad or an Android phone, chances are you already have an app that allows you to listen to podcasts.
She's probably going to come back in.
Oh, there she
Yeah,
is.
she did. Yeah,
There she is.
but I can't hear her.
Muted.
Yeah, my internet's going in and out. It's
Mhm.
unbelievable. So I think I'll do this from the center from now on.
Yeah.
So where were you? Did you need me to advance the slide?
I was just gonna see if people wanted to, and I guess to make things easier, we'll do this after the session today. That'll just be a little piece of homework to check out the NPR website and just listen to a podcast. There's a bunch that they have on there that are pretty short. One good thing about podcasts is that you don't have to listen to the entire thing at the same time. You can always come back to it. You'll still be able to find that episode. So it's not like you have to sit somewhere for an hour and a half listening to the whole thing. You can do half and then come back later. Okay. All right. So let's, I think we might be on slide 7. All right.
So did you cover this one?
Yep. So these are just the different apps that you can download to access podcasts. And then, yep, we're just going to have everybody go to the NPR site on their own and explore some podcasts, especially if podcasts are new to them. And then we'll move down one more. Okay. So here's a list. And to be honest, I think this might be a little bit old. I think the Amateur Travel is not even a podcast anymore, but here's some popular podcasts. We talked about that podcast Serial at the beginning. TED Talks, if you're interested in TED Talks, you can get the app for that. At the end of our session today, Judy's going to email everybody a list of podcasts that are kind of some of the more popular podcasts right now. But as you can see, Oprah has a podcast. There's travel, there's food, there's politics, all different kinds of topics depending on what you're interested in. So we'll make sure you get that, because I think, and I don't know, raise your hand if you agree, but if you maybe are interested in dabbling in podcasts, but you don't know where to start, it can be kind of overwhelming because there are almost 1 million podcasts out there. So yeah, okay. So this was just a really kind of quick overview of podcasts, but I'd love to open it up for just anybody's questions, what they are, what do we do with them? Why do I need to know about this?
Christina,
Yeah.
I'd like to bring up an addition to podcast.
Sure. Of course.
I listen to a lot of BBC Radio because I like radio plays and things like that. And BBC Radio also has a lot of podcasts, a wider variety than I think even NPR. So just don't always think it has to be a podcast. There are streaming radio services that also do additional podcasts or have podcast like shows. So I just wanted to bring that up to give people more variety.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Are those streaming radio services, are those free also, or do you have to pay?
BBC is free. There will be some content that, because we're not citizens of the UK, we don't have access to, but I listen to serials. I'm re-listening to the anniversary edition of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy right now. I listen to a lot of mysteries and things like that. So I do BBC Radio. And so yes, most of them are free.
Great, thanks. Any other questions or comments or things that they'd like to add for the group? Yeah, Debbie.
I just wanted to say I noticed that Dave Tanzer joined the group.
Yeah. Hey, Dave.
He's volunteered in some of my classes, and he actually, I know he has some podcasts he really likes that he mentioned once before that I don't remember that sounded interesting. So I was just going to invite him maybe to say something.
Oh, yeah. Well, I listen to a lot of different podcasts. I'm a fan of Malcolm Gladwell, and he has an interesting podcast called Revisionist History, where he does his sort of take on the world, which is sort of from an interesting angle. But yeah, I listen to lots and lots of different podcasts. What you can do is just search around on whatever podcast app you're using. Some of them will automatically, keep the podcast for a certain amount of time. The other thing that's nice about podcasts is that they're downloaded usually to your device, so you don't need the internet if you're someplace where you just want to listen to something for a while and pass the time, like in motor vehicles or whatever. Then you can pull up your podcast app and listen to some stuff. Let me see. Right. Take a look at one of my podcast app to see if there's any others, particular ones I would suggest. Let's see.
Okay, this is what we're going to say here. The podcasts are the solution to boring long waits at DMV.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I do listen to a lot of the NPR ones. They're very good. The New York Times has an interesting one called The Daily, and a few days ago they did a couple of special podcasts that were not coronavirus related to give people a break. And then I would recommend going and finding those. But there's a whole bunch of kind of news-oriented ones that I listen to as well, although I've sort of cut back a little bit when it gets a little too much.
And that's actually a good, oh, sorry, Dave.
I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody has on particular podcasts.
Yeah. And that brought up something, we could all create a podcast if we wanted to on whatever topic we wanted, right? That doesn't mean we're necessarily experts or that what we're saying is true. So just like any news we get on the internet or anything you see on social media, you always want to just kind of check the source of, oops. I think we got a message from Bonnie, a chat message I'm seeing, and everyone just Change colors.
So Bonnie asked here, how do you get on this? I can see in here, but no picture. Are there instructions somewhere? Oh, you're talking about getting on Zoom.
Yes.
You're on Zoom. We hear you and we see your picture and you're moving and your expression of wonder.
Yes, there's Bonnie.
So I don't know what you're doing on your end that you're not seeing all of us because you're clearly.
Oh, I'm seeing you guys, but I'm not seeing myself.
Oh, okay. Go up to the top, activate the cursor with your screen with your cursor. Go up to the top and click on gallery view.
Oh, now I see you.
You should see everybody Hollywood Square style.
It's on one page. It's not on, I think I have 2 pages. Well, don't wait for me. Go ahead.
Okay.
Okay.
By the way, just to tell you that next week, I'm going to open this up at 11 o'clock prior to the call for anybody who needs help with Zoom. So we're going to do that. So we'll do it prior to the call so we don't have to do it each time we're on these calls. Go ahead, Christina.
Yeah, I guess anybody have any questions? I'm going to have Judy pop up some of those handouts just so I can quickly go through it and you know what you're getting. Yeah, Mary. I think you might, there you go. Yep, I got you.
So I was told that, like what David was saying, you could go on all these different websites, but that if you use facilities Wi-Fi, it's dangerous because then they can download some important information. Do you have any thoughts on that?
So is the question on using public Wi-Fi?
Yeah, with all these with these iPods and stuff.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a question that we get a lot, right? Is it safe to use public Wi-Fi? Because we can find Wi-Fi pretty much anywhere. You can get Wi-Fi at McDonald's and Starbucks and the mall and the airport.
Right.
So, and anyone that has any thoughts on this, please share. I've done some basic research into it, and kind of the rule of thumb that I follow is that I don't do any kind of banking or any kind of sending any kind of personal information on a public network, even if it requires a password. You know, oftentimes you'll be connecting to a network. So right now I'm in an apartment building and I'm using their Wi-Fi in the lobby, and there's a password for it. So
Right.
it is secure, but I personally, I don't want to be doing my banking, or I'm not going to be doing my taxes and all that kind of stuff, just because it makes me feel more secure.
So just listening to an iPod is safe.
If you're like listening to a podcast,
rather.
Yeah, I mean, I would say so. And Moniette or Debbie, if you have any thoughts on that, I wouldn't have any concerns about doing that. But I mean, I guess it's also personal preference too.
So I'm not aware of any major security warnings about listening to podcasts, as long as you're downloading from a reputable location using a reputable app like Stitcher or something like that. So I have not seen any security alerts about podcasts in that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you, Moniette. Richard?
That's kind of my understanding too. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
A different question, but first, I mean, on the security question, one of the things I'm kind of generally aware of, you know, like I wouldn't do banking in a public place. But what about something like just logging on to check my email, which is something I do very often in a public place, and that does involve a password.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, would you not check your email on a public Wi-Fi network?
Well, there's two different.
Oh, no, not again.
Because they've become so popular, they've made it relatively easy for anyone to start a podcast. I haven't looked into it. I guess I don't have a topic I'm interested in enough to start a podcast. But really, I think you just need a microphone and there's trying to think of the name of some of these sites. I'd have to look up. There's some sites out there where you can they'll host your podcast for you.
Mhm.
I don't know those off the top of my head,
Sort of
but I
like
think it's relatively easy to
audio
get
blogging
involved.
in a way.
I was just going to add, I've been involved in internet radio show for a couple of years back that did both podcasts and streaming. And then I've been involved in 2 podcast productions. And I just wanted to say that, yes, the hosting can be important, but if you're just starting out, there are some free and inexpensive hosts. And what they do is they'll hold your podcast so people can download from there. It's the same as when you create a website. They'll host your content for you, and then people can access it that way. So there are free and low-cost services that will host. In terms of recording, I have a setup here at home so that I could do podcasts. So I can put together a little list of things you might want to look at for doing a podcast. But the headset that I'm on right now is a Bluetooth headset. It costs less than $40, and you can do it with fairly inexpensive equipment as well.
All right, Richard, are you going to get a podcast out there?
No, I have to think about it. But it's nice to know. It never occurred to me to do one, but that's
yeah, great. All right, any other questions?
Okay, do you want me to share now the document?
Yeah, I just want to kind of show what they're going to get in the email, so it's not.
Okay, while I'm doing the share, would everybody please go into the chat? So the bubble activate the screen with your cursor. You'll see the bubble at the very bottom center of your screen says chat underneath it. If you click on that, a box will open, most likely to the right of your Zoom screen. At the very, 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 very bottom, there's something that says type message here.
Yes.
Cursor's there. So would you type your email in if you want to receive these handouts? Okay, and I'll share them now.
So this one is just kind of a general, it kind of goes along with the slides, and it's really just a couple bullet points about the general topics we discussed. What's a podcast? Why should we listen to podcasts? Where to find them? And the next handout is, so I've just put together some instructions for how to listen to podcasts for an Android. And I tried to include some screenshots. So I just created this the other day. So if you go through and you have any questions or get stuck anywhere, just send me a message. And if you're interested, I'll make sure you have my contact information if you don't, and I can help you through it. But this should be able to get you to an episode of a podcast. And as I mentioned at the beginning, I know some people came in a little bit late, but what we want to do is kind of introduce podcasts today, and then maybe at some point in the near future, schedule a time where we can all get back together again after listening to the same podcast episode. And this one in particular is about robocalls. So it's kind of just interesting to find out why we're getting all these calls and why it seems like we're getting more than ever before. This episode is about 40 minutes long. And again, you don't have to listen to the whole thing at the same time. But if you go through these instructions, it should guide you through locating this episode and then listening to it. Again, any questions or get stuck, just reach out. I'm happy to help you through. There's one for iPhone and one for Android. And then at the bottom of each of these, it gives you instructions if you're interested in listening via, your computer or tablet. Okay. So those are, actually, I think there's one more. So you might get 4 different documents. And this one is just kind of where to begin with podcasts. Here are some of my favorites and some of the more popular ones in different topic areas. I'll highlight a couple of my faves. at the bottom there. If you're interested in history, especially women in history, History Chicks is pretty good. S-Town, and the S stands for a bad word, which I won't say, but it's a serial story, and it's a true story, and it's actually really fascinating story. I just recommend it. I think it's great. Let's see what else we have here. How I Built This is just all these big companies that we know and maybe use every day, the story of how they started. Let's see what else we got here. I listen to Up First every morning while I'm brushing my teeth. It's just, they're really short, about 10 to 15 minutes long, and it's just 3 or 4 of the topics that you need to know in the news. And then here's some real juicy ones. We got Dirty John. Has anyone, I know that was a show on TV. Serial, if you want to listen to kind of the original podcast.
I love Dirty John, I have to say.
Yeah, Dirty John is really good. It's very interesting. And then The Shrink Next Door is interesting as well. That's I think by like New York Times writer. It's good. Just listen. But yeah, there's tons out there.
I would say that listening to Serial is what got me hooked on podcasts.
Yeah.
It's just fabulous.
Yep, that was the very first podcast I listened to. So I think a lot of people are in the same boat. So, all right. Like I said, we'll send these documents off to you. And then if you have questions or get stuck or like can't find an episode, just send me a message or give me a call. I know many of you have my phone number. If you don't, let me know and I can pass that along to you. And I'm happy to help you get through it. Bonnie.
I missed the first thing. What did you say to send you if we want these handouts?
Just your email address.
Oh, no, just put your email into the chat. So activate the screen with your cursor. The very bottom in the middle should say chat and a bubble above it, talk bubble. And you just click on that. The chat box will open on the side of your screen. And then in the very bottom of that chat box, at the very bottom of your screen, it'll say type message here. And please just put your email address in there. I don't want to send people things they don't want to have. So just put your email address in and I'll send you that this afternoon.
Okay, well, I can't see it, so.
Okay, Bonnie, I'll send it to you anyway.
Okay.
Any questions or comments? We're at our time in 1 minute. Anybody want to say anything?
I want to say this is great. We're learning while we're absorbing other information, because I've used Zoom maybe once and got totally confused, but this is really a great service. Thank you.
You're welcome. So Bonnie, if you want to come on early any day, any Monday through Friday, just pop on early and I'll help you, navigate a few things.
Okay. So anytime after 11, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Joanne,
okay.
You have to unmute yourself.
Okay. I'm not seeing how to send my email address to Christina.
So when you click on that chat, you didn't get a pop-up on
I got a pop-up and everything, okay. But I don't see where you click for sending.
You have to go to the very, very bottom. There's tiny words. It says type message here. The cursor is right there.
I've done that.
Okay, and then hit enter. I'm sorry, hit enter. It doesn't tell you.
Okay. Oh, okay.
There you go. Okay, yeah, now more came up. Any other questions? I know it's so hard to remember every little detail.
Yeah.
So
but this feels like we're in outer space and we're learning all this wonderful stuff. I love it.
Oh, good. Jan, how about you?
Judy, I don't have a question, but a comment. Okay. I've been calling folks that I met from some of the other classes and telling them about signing in here. And so I've been sending them a copy of the email that you had sent out earlier about this week. And so I think some of them are joining, joining the sessions, but they aren't actually, I guess, listed as members because they didn't get from you.
Oh, it's interesting.
Members?
Because my husband is a member, and the sun is coming right in, and he is not getting the emails either. And he's in the system. We've checked it. So I know that there is something, and I alert New York every time this happens. So if they just want to, email me, Judy@seniorplanet.com, say I'm not getting the newsletter. If you know anybody that said that to you, and then I will at least forward it to them directly. But yeah, it is definitely, I just can't figure it out. And neither has New York. So I'm trying my best to make sure, but I appreciate that one yet. So if you do tell your friends that are in your classes and all of that, that this is a possibility if they want to do this. But so thank you for that.
And there are a couple of folks who I've just talked to about Senior Planet, and they qualify because we're all, master seniors. So can they become members through this system that we're using now?
You know
or
what?
Do they have to wait until the center opens?
Yeah, just invite them to come in. They can become members on the website, but they don't have to go to the donation through the donation piece of it if they don't choose to. We don't have that. That's a New York setup. We have a different situation in Colorado, so they can just fill out the member application and become members so that they hopefully will get the newsletter. But I just want to make sure, though, that anybody who wants to come on, let's be generous and just invite your friends and say, just come on for now. Oh, my internet's saying I'm unstable again. Hopefully I won't cut out. Jan, let me go to you. Hurry up before my internet craps out.
Yesterday was the first time I came on, and I think we had a protocol about raising our hand if we have a question. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we did.
Okay, well, anyway, you're aware that there was another link to this Zoom that came in today? Because some of us went to that by mistake.
No, I'm not.
That was from New York, I think.
That was from New York. That had nothing to do with this. The link.
So the one that we're doing today, we always go to that original email.
Yeah. Go to that original email. As a matter of fact, this is what you should do. Copy the link, paste it into your calendar. So on the days, so the way I did it, it's on my calendar reoccurring from now till doomsday. And when we, all get back together, we'll get back together. But so just put it on the calendar as a reoccurring appointment if you have an electronic calendar.
Yeah, it wanted me to set up a Microsoft one, which I don't, and so I have to figure out another Google Calendar to set up. I haven't got Calendar set up.
Oh, okay. But even even if you just write down the link, it's not that long. If you want to just put that in, if you're worried you're going to lose track of anything. But yeah, please feel free to invite your friends and let them come on. We want anybody who's feeling isolated not to feel isolated, to have some fun, to learn something. So today was the first time we did this learning thing. And I think that went beautifully. Oh, let me turn this off. And I want to thank
Christina.
Yeah. Oh, thanks.
Christina.
Tom, I saw you had your hand up. Did you have a question before we head out?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Well, it's too late. Maybe tomorrow I'll bring it up.
Okay, Tom, if you can wait. Did you want to say something, Christina?
I just wanted to say thank you. This was my first Zoom training I've ever done. So this was awesome. I'm glad we had such a great turnout, and it was really fun. It was so good to see many familiar faces and some new faces. So
great job, Christina. Yeah. Great job, Judy. Well done,
everybody.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.
For those who can, we will meet again tomorrow. I gotta bring my lunch though. I'm starving. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.